Welcome to the Costume Plot.
I'm JoJo Siu.
And I'm Sarah Tim. We're professional designers with a passion for costume design and the performing arts. Our podcast does contain spoilers. Accompanying slideshows for each movie are linked in the episode description.
We hope you'll join us every other week as we delve into the wonderful world of costume design in the Costume Plot. Hello, and welcome.
Welcome back.
It feels like it's been forever.
I know.
Every time.
That's okay. I was listening to a podcast today, and they were like, we never know what to do in the intro. So I think it's pretty common that people it's a little bit awkward just to start talking.
Socially awkward for the first 5 minutes.
Exactly. Well, welcome to the Costume Plot. We're glad you're here. We have a quick plug at the top. JoJo and I, just yesterday, we were just on our friend's podcast, Tim and Ashley Espinoza. It's called Breaking the Fourth Wall. And we had a really lovely conversation with them about theater, about design, our jobs, what we want to see change in the world of theater, you know, what we love about it, that kind of thing. So go check it out. Yeah,
there'll be some plugs and things to kind of get you guys to know where to go to listen to our little interview.
Yeah. I'll put the link in the description of the episode, and then there's also going to be a post in our Instagram feed, like, you know, showing you where to go. So, yeah, it was really, really fun, and I'm excited to listen to their podcast, actually, because, like, the conversation was so great that I want to keep listening, so.
They've got some pretty good interviews. And apparently we were their first designers on their podcast, so that's really exciting. But yeah, shout out to other podcasts, and really we love to support other podcasts that are talking about theater as well. So This is really exciting.
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah.
So you want to get into our topic or our theme for this week, Sarah?
So today's theme has been a little bit exciting for us because it's horror, and neither of us watch a lot of horror. So it was a bit of an adventure for both of us.
To say the least.
I'm a scaredy cat. I'll speak for myself. I don't watch a lot of horror.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going first, and my movie is Midsommar.
Ugh, so scary.
It was so scary. I was
For those of you
shook.
who are also not horror movie watchers, I tried to watch 10 minutes of this movie and then like very promptly had to just find the Wikipedia explanation and promptly decided that I wasn't going to watch the rest of it. So Sarah's very brave for taking one for the team.
I am very brave. I went in blind. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to read any plot synopsis. I had no idea what it was about. I knew it was like culty, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I knew Florence Pugh's in it. I really like her. And I was so scared. So I'll just dive in. Let me open my notes and then dive in.
I'm already scared.
I'm not going to jump scare you, JoJo.
I know. Thank goodness.
So this movie, Midsommar, came out in 2019, directed by Ari Aster, also written by Ari. I think he's a boy, written by him. He is known for Hereditary, which is another horror movie that like made a big splash when it came out, which I will not be watching. I'll just say that. I'm sure it's great.
I didn't even hear about it, so I mean.
The costumes are by Andrea Flesch, who you might know as the designer of Colette, which was a Keira Knightley movie that came out a few years back. And then she has had a lot of... she's been working a lot, but not a lot of titles I recognized. But this is obviously this is a really good costume movie, so I'm sure we'll be seeing more of her. I think she's Hungarian. She lives in Budapest, I think. And this movie won for Best Costume Design at the Fright Meter Awards, which I think is a horror awards thing. So
sounds like it.
Yeah, Fright Meter it sounds like horror. So the setting is like modern day, and we start in maybe New York. It's never said, but it looks kind of New Yorky. You know, young millennial people, very hip. I always assume that they're in New York. And then we go to a remote commune in Sweden, and so the basic premise I'll just do a quick rundown of the plot, is that Florence Pugh's character Danny and her boyfriend are like in a really tenuous like crappy relationship where he wanted to break up with her and didn't, and then she goes through this horrible personal tragedy where like all of her family dies. By the way, this movie is very rated R, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because our podcast is not rated R.
Yes.
Yeah. So then he like can't break up with her because she's going through this, and then his friends are like in grad school and they're going to write, one of them played by William Jackson Harper, who is, we love from The Good Place, Chidi on The Good Place, is writing his thesis on Midsommar traditions in like Europe. And so they're going to go to this commune that their Swedish friend grew up on to see their Midsommar traditions. So that's where we go. And then horrible things ensue. Lots of death.
So many horrible things.
Lots of gore. A lot of like, it's been a long time since I watched a horror movie and like really felt the buildup of like the tension and the unease that they built. It was like I felt unsettled for most of it. Okay, so that's basically the plot. And like I'm not going to give away a ton of stuff because, as I said, it's super rated R and I don't need to describe what happens. I think if you've seen it, you know, and if you don't like gore, you won't like it. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with Dani. This is kind of, this is after she's already had her horrible family, like, trauma, tragedy. So she starts the movie in very, like, drapey neutrals. Everything looks really soft. I think she's a student. So it's all kind of, like, basic. It all looks, like, it doesn't look cheap. You know, she doesn't look poor. But this is, like, kind of dark. But that's kind of where we find her. And then quickly we go to Sweden, and this is her and the group of the American people. Mm-hmm. And then the guy in the blue shirt in the middle, the light blue shirt, is the Swedish friend. So I found this really interesting that like how they look as a group together. Like nobody's wearing pattern at all. It's all just solid colors, like really soft, muted t-shirts, which is, I think, unusual. Like when you have a group of American people, usually somebody's going to be wearing some sort of plaid or a stripe or a logo. But so that was an interesting choice, I thought. Here's a front view of her outfit. She wears a lot of these like cuffed pants, and they look like they might be linen, which makes sense because like it's summer, so it's probably hot. Yeah. So then this contrasts with the people that they meet in the commune, which is called Harga. I'm excellent at Swedish, as you can tell.
I would not be able to help you, Sarah.
So we get to the cult, and classic cult, everybody's wearing white. I will say, like, this is going to be a little different from our usual coverage because, like, there's not a lot of specific costumes that I want to call out. It's kind of just like overall themes and, you know, because everybody in the cult is pretty much dressed the same. So I'll have the opportunity later to give some information that I got from like articles with Andrea Flesh to like how her process and stuff. So yeah. Oh yeah. It feels folky. You know, apparently like this movie, the genre is technically folk horror. That's what I learned.
I didn't even know that was a category.
Apparently it is. It's possible that Midsommar invented it.
Right.
And it's also like everything happens in the daylight, which is so unusual for a horror movie. Everything is very brightly lit. You know, like usually horror is all about what's dark.
That's almost more terrifying.
Yeah.
They're hidden in plain sight.
Yeah. So basically, their Midsommar tradition is like a 7-day feast. Like a feast every day. So the designer like started everybody off in mostly all white, and then like as the movie goes on brings in sort of like one color at a time, adds like little hints of color, and then by the end they've all got color mixed in. So I thought that was pretty
interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Here's more cult stuff. So then like the first ceremony is like the first like real scary scene. It's basically like a suicide ceremony, and it's so these two people end up dying, and it's they're very like visually divided from the rest of the group. Obviously, they're wearing like special outfits because they are like the special people in the ceremony, And then we've got everybody else bringing in sort of like hints of blue along with the white.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this stripy vest right here. I kept noticing this guy in all the scenes being like, there's that vest.
And he's got like multicolored buttons.
Some stuff I learned from the articles that I read is that, you know, they're really cut off from like modern society. So they make all their own clothes. So everything looks very homespun. Looks like they made it themselves. And like she said, she intentionally made some of it look better made than others.
Right.
Like to, you know, because it depends on who made it or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll do some more information from those articles that I read. So she said not everything that she used, like the embroidery, textiles, like colors, are necessarily specifically Swedish, but she borrowed stuff from other folk traditions, like other Scandinavian countries, Hungary. She listed other countries, but I didn't write them down. So good job, me. But she basically kind of like pick and choose like what she wanted to use and like made her own sort of like folk look. And I think it's super effective.
Yeah.
They filmed in Hungary and they didn't have a huge budget. So she did a lot of her shopping in Hungary. And she said that she found like 700 yards of this linen that was 100 years old. So like a lot of it is made of 100-year-old linen. Can you believe?
That's fantastic.
I know.
Like, when do you get a story like that? Especially for a horror movie.
Also, where do you find 100-year-old linen?
That's so true. I guess in Hungary.
And I gotta go to Hungary. I would love to like fabric shop in Europe. Like I've never been. So like,
agreed.
I can't even imagine how.
That should be our next trip. Maybe
Okay,
when we get rich and famous, this podcast can pay for us to travel.
We'll do a little costume plot tour. We'll do some live shows.
That would be amazing.
Oh, that would be fun.
So fun. Down the line.
I feel like we could. Okay, like not to go too off topic, but like the movie analysis podcast I listen to, they do live episodes, and all we need is like a projector, and we do a slideshow, and we do the thing live. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be so fun. Okay, 10-year plan. 5-year plan. I'd hope that this would be happening in 5 years, but
DM us if you want to come see us live, and then we'll Venmo us $10 for your ticket right now.
Then you can finally see our faces.
Exactly. Okay. Anyway, the embroidery is all done by hand, and like she found teams of people in Hungary to do embroidery for her. So I just love that it all looks handmade.
Yeah.
That's very effective.
I love that lady's, like, I don't know if it's like a bodice or that one. Yeah, the one you're pointing at. Oh, that's so beautiful. And her hat.
She had another bodice later on that I really liked, and I couldn't find any good pictures of it, and I got sad. But she's always doing like a cute bodice. So what's next? Oh, this is a nice little shot that we get of this girl who's like going after Danny's boyfriend. She's like carving something to put under his bed, but we can see like the embroidery on her cuff and right here, and it's just like really beautiful little details. Really well done.
It almost looks like it's like printed on the fabric too, like they did a stamp or something. She mentioned that some of it is painted, so I think that this red pattern right here is painted on rather than embroidered. Ooh, beautiful. I labeled this picture death because this is from the death ceremony. And this scene was really visually striking because like the white outfits really blend in with sort of like the white rocky backdrop. And so the outsiders who have been brought in are so visible. You can see this guy back here. His name's Simon. He dies. Everybody dies. You can see like classic horror movie trope.
Everybody ends up dead except Danny. Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Right.
The Americans, and here they are. They're not next to the crowd in this picture, but like you can see like they're so much darker in color their clothes are than everybody else. So like in the big crowd shots, like you can really pick them out, and they really stand out as being different from everybody else.
Yeah. Here's
Danny. So this is toward the end. I pretty much skipped the whole middle of the movie. That's okay.
No worries.
It's more folk costumes, more white. So this is her doing like a maypole dance with the women of the community. And I'm going to talk about these symbols right here on the front of her blouse. Let's see. Where is it? Here. This is from an article on fashionista.com. They used a runic alphabet to create their own like language called affect. And every person in Harga has a rune assigned to them that has meaning for their life or their like role in the community. So then they give her this outfit to wear for the maypole dance, and apparently the runes on the front of her blouse, the hourglass one means helplessness or innocence, and the like backwards R forebodes crisis and death. So,
just in case you needed some foreshadowing at the end of the movie.
Like, your role is crisis and death. Here you go. Enjoy your dance.
Oh, gosh.
And then we've got lots of flower crowns happening. Beautiful.
Those are very beautiful.
They made all of them. They made everything. Like you can't rent like 500 white costumes and stuff. So
right.
It's all very well done. Beautiful.
I do love those flower crowns. I feel like when I think about making flower crowns now, it's like, I don't think I have any flowers that would make it that full looking. Like, mine would just look really sad and droopy. Like,
I think a good flower crown is like the fuller the better.
Yep, agreed.
This is like a full body shot of later because she.
Oh my gosh, it gets bigger.
She wins. She won the maypole dance, so they name her the May Queen, and they give her this, which is apparently this little flower cape is like an actual real thing. They based it on like real regalia from like Midsommar traditions, so that's cool. Oh yeah, but then later on they kind of make it into something that does not exist in real life. I'll show you that in a second. I like this headdress. It's like a
there's a space. I didn't realize it goes up.
Yeah, it's almost like
like the top of a basket holder.
Yeah, like a little handle. But in some shots it looked almost like it was horns. So it was a really interesting, like evil, foreboding, pretty like contrast. I like that. And I like this, her skirt, too. Like, it's got, like, a little apron. So cute.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I would wear a lot of the clothes in this movie. I don't want to be in a Swedish death cult.
It's weird thinking of, I don't want to be in the movie, but...
I will take
but they look beautiful.
Cute women's skirt any day of the week. And then here's another shot of, like, the side where you can see the embroidery on her blouse. It's so beautiful. Such beautiful little details. And then this girl over here.
Yeah, it is very, like... I mean, forgive my ignorance, but it does look very Scandinavian or like Norwegian, which I think is so lovely.
I thought that too, and I was like, do I just not know? Because she said like, oh, it's not necessarily Swedish, but like I think it looks pretty Swedish based on Swedish stuff I've seen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not an expert, but yeah.
That folksy look that we all associate with East European countries or like North European.
Oh, and you can see in this, so this is toward the end of the movie, so like we've got the white and then we've got blue, red, and then there's some yellow that comes into to like as the celebrations continue, like the most important one has the most color. And then so here we have this lady who seemed to be like in charge. I'm not sure what her role was, but she's like a priestess sort of role. She was like doing the ceremonies and stuff. So I don't know what her rune means, but there it is.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then she has a cool headdress.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called, but it's cool. Looks good. And then this is her in her house, which is like crazy looking. It's got like stuff all over the walls. Yeah.
It's like tiles, but like tarot card tiles.
Yeah. They do kind of look like tarot cards.
But in white.
Yeah, so she wears this for, like, the whole movie. But I just wanted to show it because I like it.
Her hat looks very, like, Danish almost.
I'll take your word for it.
Or, like, that could also be Scandinavian.
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone out there who's Scandinavian, please educate us.
Yeah, I did a little research, but I didn't do that
know.
much research. Like, I didn't do research into what things are called.
It's really lovely. It's a really lovely silhouette, though.
And it looks, like, it's really soft. I don't know what it's made of. Maybe wool?
Or like a felted wool almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It does look very soft.
What do we have next? Oh, this is a scene of like all the women they're like comforting her in a moment of scary stuff happening. I'm not gonna talk about it. So you can see like how they're ready for like the party. So like they're wearing super colorful stuff. I love these tassels. Like I love all of it. And you can see their hair too, very Swedish looking with the like milkmaid braids and stuff. Pretty.
Look at that blue trim.
I know.
So pretty.
Gorge. Yeah, I'll also shout out like the production design is really cool on this movie. Like even before we got to the Swedish commune, like I really liked the color palette we were working with. Like it's such a very clear visual language. You can tell that this director is one of those directors who like has a vision, and I like that. It's kind of like gave me the same feeling as Parasite, where I was like, this feels so well designed, like all of it.
Right.
So this lady, how do I describe what happens to her in non-rated R terms? She has like a fertility ceremony, let's just say that. And then after that, she gets to wear this bodice, which is like, I think it's because she's like more of a woman. She's like moving into the next phase or whatever. And she's wearing a red lip, which nobody else is. Yeah. So she must be special.
I do love that vest. Or like bodice. It's not quite a vest, but
I would call it a bodice, yeah. It's got like tabs with like lace around it. Floral print, gorge.
So pretty.
What's next? Oh, here's more crowd people wearing all their colors. That's sad.
This is such a disarming movie because I feel like visually, if me just looking at all of these stills is like, oh, this can't be a horror movie. Everyone looks so happy.
Yeah.
It's like that's what makes it more terrifying.
That's why, okay, so like I had seen some pictures and I was like, oh yeah, that movie looks beautiful, and I heard it was scary, but I think I was misled by the photos I've seen about how, like it being scary. I was like, it's probably like a little bit creepy, but not like super scary. It was super scary.
That's what I heard. Yeah, because I think when I first saw it like on Netflix, I just saw the cover photo and it's like her crying. And so I was just like, oh, maybe it's just like a really intensely felt emotion from the actual Midsummer Night's Dream. Nope, that is not at all what it is.
Apparently Ari Aster originally like was approached about making like, or I don't know if his idea, don't quote me, but it was like originally just going to be like a slasher movie set in sort of like a Swedish cult. And then he actually went through a breakup in his own life. And so he decided to make the movie like about a relationship ending. Yeah. So like that's the central thing that's happening to the protagonist as she is like also being tormented by these cult members. I mean, in this picture, so this is her boyfriend, Christian. He's been given like a paralytic and he can't move or talk, but he's like awake and cognizant.
That's terrifying. Terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, so grand finale. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Boom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She just keeps growing.
So this is not a very good quality picture, but this is what I could find. It's, for those who haven't seen it, it's like a conical dress made entirely of flowers, and there's like no sleeves. It's like she's in a cone made of flowers. So I have some information about it. This is the thing that they made up. Like, this is not something that exists in folk traditions. It has a structure underneath it of like a hoop skirt, which is, that's kind of what I would expect to be under there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's got like fabric, and then they used over 10,000 silk flowers. And the designer was like, well, in my dream world, we would have used real flowers, but it took us weeks and weeks to make. So like, that wouldn't have worked.
It would have died.
Yeah. And apparently based on the interview I read, it seems like the costume designer herself was working on this piece, like was there sewing on flowers and gluing the flowers with her team, which I was excited to see. Yeah. That's kind of unusual.
I feel like I do that so much. It's like, it's like nice to hear that other designers are doing that too.
If it's like a lower budget movie, like they're all on location in Hungary, they're getting it done. Like if it needs to get done, like it makes sense that she'll get in there and start and help out.
Contribute.
So yeah, I love that. So yeah, it's very striking. It's very strange, and
she looks so upset being in there too.
That's like Florence Pugh's signature face. She has like a downturn in her mouth.
She really does.
Yeah. She's basically watching everybody die during this scene. So it's traumatic.
Got it.
Yeah.
And stuck in this cone of flowers.
Apparently, in between takes, they would put like a little chair inside the cone so she could sit in it. Because apparently it was really heavy and hard to move around in, which makes sense. So yeah, that's the end. I have one more picture, and it's just like a rendering. And I don't think that Andrea Flesch did this. I think she had them done, but they are beautiful.
Yeah.
Just a nice little rendering to cleanse our palates. Do I have anything else from the articles I didn't mention? No, I pretty much said everything. Yay me.
Yay! I know, it's funny because, like, it's exactly like what you said. I think looking at all these images, anyone else would be totally fooled that this is a horror movie. Because you don't see any of that, like...
Yeah.
You just get trapped and then you find out it's a horror movie and then it's too late.
I will say, like, blood and gore is also very jarring against the background of, like, these all-white costumes and, like, the bright landscape and stuff. It's visually very striking.
Right.
I'll just say that.
Right.
So yeah, that's Midsommar. I'm not gonna say I'm traumatized, but because I'm okay, I have not been having nightmares or anything. But it was quite an experience.
That's good. That's
watch.
good. I do feel like as I've gotten older, like scary movies will still scare me, which is why I still choose not to watch them. But I don't feel like I get nightmares as frequently as I used to when I was younger. Because, like, I don't know, maybe my overactive imagination was just more rampant when I was younger. I don't know. But yes, I feel like there's a lot more scary movies that I'm able to, like, kind of push myself through. And then, like, at the end of it, I'm kind of like, okay, great. Now I know how to compartmentalize that and just put it away and try not to think about it while I'm sleeping.
I will say that, like, this... I can handle, like, the violence and, like, the people doing bad things to each other. What keeps me up at night and will give me nightmares is, like, ghosts or demons.
Yeah.
Like, haunted stuff really freaks me out. I can handle, like, just, like, creepy humans, but not ghosts.
I think watching ghost movies is much worse for me, like you said. But I do feel like I've gotten to a point where seeing that much violence is also, like, it gets to me when I'm watching too much of it, like, over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are all a little too used to violence in our media.
Yes, yeah.
So it is good to kind of take a step back and be like, is it a good thing that I'm used to this and it doesn't bother me? Like, probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still definitely moments where, I mean, even action movies, sometimes I'm just like, oh, like, I was not expecting that to happen. So, yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I'm glad I didn't get any information about what the actual scary parts of that movie were, but still got to see some beautiful costumes.
Yes. I was watching it being like, how am I gonna... And I was like, you know what? I don't need to describe the plot. Like, that's not what people are listening to us for. They're not listening to us for a plot summary. If they need to know what it's about, they can go read Wikipedia or just watch it. Because we're here to talk about the clothes.
True. Okay.
All right, I'm so ready to see yours. I've seen some costumes from this movie, and they're beautiful. I've never seen the movie. But
it's funny because I had been talking about this movie because I had covered it in class, and it was something that, like, I was using a previous PowerPoint that had already been made, so I was kind of just talking about the same thing, but then I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about this movie. And I really, really love Guillermo del Toro. I haven't seen Shape of Water yet, which I still really have to see and would love to see. But I absolutely loved Pan's Labyrinth, which is also directed by him, if you don't know. But, you know, just really, really stunning. And again, I consider this a horror movie, but I really do feel like he's very much a kind of gothic romance type of director, because there's always a sense of, like, romanticized fantasy about his horror stories. So yes, I will talk about that shortly. But I decided to cover the movie Crimson Peak, which again is directed by Guillermo del Toro, who's done Pan's Labyrinth, The Shape of Water. He actually also did both of the Hellboys, which I totally forgot about. Yeah. He did Pacific Rim, and then he actually got really into, like, animated movies recently. And I don't know if you've ever seen the show Troll Hunters, Tales of Arcadia. It's I mean, every once in a while I'll watch animated, like, shows and TV shows and stuff, but this one was really, really good. I would highly recommend watching that as well.
Cool.
The storytelling is just really, really great. And the animation is actually pretty good as well. And apparently he's down to do an animated, like, stop motion version of Pinocchio, which I'm very excited to see. Obviously, it's going to be a much darker Pinocchio because it's Guillermo del Toro, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
I think that story is already dark. Like, Pinocchio is not my favorite story. It's creepy and weird. So
it's definitely
I think
creepy.
A creepy, weird adaptation is appropriate.
Yes. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see his take on it. And then the costume designer for Crimson Peak was Kate Hawley, who actually did Suicide Squad. She also did Edge of Tomorrow. She worked with Guillermo on Pacific Rim. She also did The Call of the Wild. And then she also worked with Guillermo quite a bit on the Hobbit trilogy. And so she has a lot of experience just working with kind of creatures and also kind of just very fantastical elements, and also huge casts. So this was actually really great for her. And then she also did the movie Lovely Bones, which I included on there because that is also a kind of true crime, horror, psychological thriller type movie.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's also a book written by someone who wrote about her experience at Syracuse University, where I went. So there's some terrifying real life stories about Syracuse that she based on her first book.
Really?
But anyways, I just thought that was really interesting that she also did Lovely Bones. So the setting for this movie, of course, is in two locations, which actually, while I was thinking about it, this is not in interviews or anything anywhere, but she sets it in Guillermo, who also wrote Crimson Peak, sets the story in Buffalo, New York, where they start. And then as well as Cumbria, England, where they eventually go. And it reminded me a lot of Dracula, actually, because, he does kind of, it's kind of a little bit backwards because they start off in Transylvania and then he comes to America. But it's this idea that there's this kind of haunted, sort of otherworldly building or location that the kind of two antagonists, I guess you could call them, are from. And then they come to America. And our leading protagonist is from Buffalo, New York.
Cool.
So it's set in the early 20th century, which is kind of the 1900s. And it's a very Edwardian silhouette for those of you who are costume history buffs, which I think is such a lovely silhouette. And she really, Kate really, really did some beautiful work for this costume or for this movie set in that time period. And obviously she pushed some things in terms of color and fabrics and just silhouette and surface decoration that is probably a little bit more exaggerated than that time period. But there's also some very, very traditional, like you see them in all the fashion plates for the Edwardian era. And it's very, very clear that that's the setting we're in.
I love Edwardian. I feel like it doesn't get done enough. Like, I think Victorian is what everybody always thinks of as, like, oldie-timey. Yeah. But, like, Edwardian deserves some attention, too.
Yeah, and there is some kind of leftover, like, 1890s silhouettes and almost even, like, bustle silhouettes that kind of carry over into some of these characters because this idea of this house being kind of left in its old history and sort of stuck in a period and kind of never moving forward. That's a big part of where we land when we go to England. Right. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. So just to kind of give you a breakdown of the story, first of all, the idea is that Edith, who is played by Mia Wasikowska, I think that's how you say her name.
Sure.
Who plays Alice in the new Alice in Wonderland. But she is our leading lady, and she's from Buffalo, New York. She comes from a very wealthy family. Her father is, I want to say he kind of owns a lot of land, and he's kind of head of this conference of men who basically help fund kind of different projects. So, of course, this very wealthy man, Thomas Sharp, ends up coming to Buffalo, New York to ask her father for funding for this big project that he's trying to take care of on his land in England. And he's basically trying to kind of dig up clay from his land to create this big thing. And he's created this invention, and he's made a little model of it to bring into this first meeting with her father. But of course, in the meantime, as he's coming to Buffalo, New York, he meets Edith on her way to basically publish a book. So she's kind of the Jane Austen of her time is what they call her, because she's sort of this bookworm. She's very intelligent. She's very smart. She's always kind of the bright light in the room. And she actually, again, we don't really go into backstory of a lot of the characters, so I can't. It sounds very much like I'm kind of confused about who the characters are, because there are a lot of characters. So there's a lot of backstory here. But basically, she comes in. She's this very kind of naive and very innocent character. So as our protagonist, she's always seeing the positive. And she starts off the story talking about how she believes that ghosts are real, and that she's basically seen them since she was little. So she lost her mom to... I want to say it was the Black Plague Black Cholera. So she lost her mom to an illness when she was very young. But her mom immediately came back as a ghost when she was probably like middle school age. So the first scene is basically her in her bedroom seeing her mother come into her bedroom as a ghost and telling her not to go to Crimson Peak, or beware of Crimson Peak is the first thing that she says. And of course, she completely forgets about all of that. Her mom never reappears to her again until she grows older. So that's kind of the premise of the story. The antagonists that come into this world are Thomas Sharp, who's again trying to build his invention, and he comes in with his sister Lucille Sharp, who is played by Jessica Chastain, and she is gorgeous in this movie. Beautiful. All of the costumes are gorgeous in this movie, but she really comes in and she's very mysterious. And there's this very kind of standoffish feeling that you get from Jessica Chastain. So I will go a little more quickly into our costumes because I've talked very much about the story. Let's see. Let me go ahead and open our first one. Okay. One big thing I did want to talk about is that the costume designer talks a lot about how she associated Edith and Lucille with different kinds of butterflies/moths. So like Edith is kind of our butterfly, very colorful, very vibrant. A lot of her color palette is kind of golds, creams, and warmer colors. In contrast to the moth, who is kind of a reflection, or Jessica Chastain's character, Lucille, is kind of the colored moth, where everything is very dark, very muted, and much darker than you would see in a lot of Edith's costumes. So let's move on. So this is actually the first scene that we ever see Edith in. And this is, it's kind of like her nightgown. She's in this quite a bit during the movie because we see a lot of scenes where she wakes up at night and she's always in this very kind of, this looks a little bit more Victorian to me. And it's almost like a combination of a couple different periods because she's got kind of the Victorian sleeves, but she also has like the frilliness of the 1890s. She's got the high collar, which is very turn of the century, but then they've also added almost like a ruff, which is a little bit Elizabethan almost.
I was thinking that, yeah.
And again, this is also being the first image. I think this is the other reason why I thought so much of Dracula, because, you know, there's the new Bram Stoker's Dracula with Aiko Ishioka's costumes, and it's very, very similar in silhouette and shape. This idea that it's kind of this transparent white nightgown. And again,
Classic.
this is a kind of jump forward to the very end of the movie, and then they don't explain how she got here, what happened. They just show her in this quick moment first. And then, you repeat back to it at the very end.
Right.
So kind of a haunting image. And she's also surrounded by snow because in England it's snowing at this time. Another nightgown shot. Wow. But again, you can kind of see her body through it. And this is... again, that naivety and that innocence of her. This image was actually, I just wanted to show this because it's just so luxurious. Like, it feels like you can, like, taste these fabrics. Like, everything is just so luscious on this set. And this is when they're still back in Buffalo. And her friend, who's the investigator, who you're kind of, like, not sure if he's in love with her the whole time, but he never really says anything, and Guillermo never really, like, touches on that whole relationship. But this is his mother, so she, of course, you know, is talking about the Sharps coming to England. You know, this is her daughter next to her, and they're very high society ladies, and they're bragging about how, you know, they're going to catch Thomas Sharp's eye, and how he's going to marry the next wealthy heiress to his humongous mansion. So they're coming in with all of these beautiful fabrics and just the kind of like mix and shapes of all the sleeves that she put into these costumes is, it's just so lovely.
Beautiful. So sumptuous.
Yes. And even like the hats and like all the decoration that goes into that. I mean, even the ladies in the back who you see for like 2 seconds, like you can see how much luxury is on here, which is pretty incredible. And then in contrast, Edith is in this very, very turn of the century silhouette. This is pretty standard. It's in a lot of fashion plates. But I love, again, that she's put her in this kind of butterscotch sort of yellow golden color. And she kind of remains in that color quite a bit throughout the movie. She kind of goes back and forth between this and the cream white kind of nightgown that she's in a lot. So I just thought this was pretty. There was nothing else I wanted to say about it.
It's very pretty.
So this scene, again, kind of going back with that butterfly idea, this is actually a scene pretty early on in the movie where she's talking to her father. She hasn't really met Thomas Sharp yet, but she's just been talking about trying to bring her publishing notes to a publisher. And it's interesting because I watched this movie after Little Women, but I'm pretty sure they made it before Little Women. But it's a very similar kind of idea of this woman trying to publish her book, and she's trying to write this kind of scary story. Like she jokes about how she wants to be Mary Shelley. And of course, the publisher tells her that she needs to include some sort of romance in there in order for it to be published. So she has this whole big... It is. And so it was just funny that she kind of had the very similar conversation.
I mean, Little Women, the book is very old. So, you know, maybe they took a little bit of inspiration from it.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And I think that also speaks a lot to her character, that she is this kind of naive, she has such ideas about, being this great author in this society where that's still not really quite accepted yet, even though we are a little further along than Little Women. But I think that was part of her character, too, is that she keeps experiencing all these things that she doesn't really understand. She's always very innocent. And even in the way that her clothing is very, very transparent, I think that was something that the costume designer really talked a lot about wanting to emphasize. In contrast to Jessica Chastain's Lucille character that we'll talk about later. So this was just another close-up of how beautiful it is. And just look at that beautiful lace.
I love that.
One of the other things that Kate Hawley also talked about was wanting to really stick as closely as she could to the traditional kind of mourning practices of that time. So this idea during the 1900s, this idea of having human hair, especially hair from a lost one or someone who died, made into some sort of a jewelry item or accessory item that you could wear. And that way you could always keep that person with you. So she actually made this belt out of human hair.
What?
And then I believe she said she also had someone they made like a mold out of ivory of these hands that she found, which are very from that period.
So the belt itself is all hair, or it just has hair in it?
It's all hair. Like, so the braided part on the side, I wish I had an image and then I decided not to pull it, but it's a close-up image of the belt. Maybe I'll include it on YouTube.
Yeah, we have to edit ourselves down, unfortunately.
I know. I was like, well, this is enough, but...
I'll take your word for it. It looked great.
But yes, so like all the braiding on the side is all from human hair, which I was like terrifying, but for this time period, it was very normal.
Yeah, super normal. Kind of a weird idea for us, but like it was so normal back then.
Yes. Absolutely. And then just, again, having these little kind of delicate lace patterns and embroidery on there that I think was very reminiscent of the butterflies that she keeps bringing back as a theme in the differentiation between the two. There's actually a whole scene where they're like in a picnic in the park and they're just picking up these like dead yellow swallowtail butterflies, which I was like, oh, that's so sad. But yes, terrifying. But yes, you see a lot of that in Edith's costume.
Oh, I've seen this, yes.
Yes. So this is prior to her going to the first ball. And she's been invited by Thomas Sharp. He's come quite late to pick her up, like out of his way to pick her up. And her father and her friend, who's the investigator, have already left. So she's like in this robe, like getting ready to go to sleep. She's not planning on going out at all. And this is what she's wearing before Thomas comes to her house. But even like the fact that she's got this sumptuous robe and it's got these beautiful flowers, which they talked at length about how everything was like hand done and all the flowers were hand sewn, which again is just an amazing feat.
So much work.
So that's all I had to say about that.
Gorge. Love it.
So pretty. I wanted to pop this quick photo in there because it just goes to show how wealthy everyone else in this town was. Like, again, this is the mother of her investigator friend who's trying to sell her daughter off to Thomas Sharp. And she's the one kind of running the party, and she's trying to get everyone to dance. But she's introducing Thomas Sharp to say that he's going to introduce how to do the dance or do the waltz for everyone. He's going to do a demonstration. And so she, of course, is expecting that he's going to ask her daughter to dance with him. And he's walked in with Edith already, so everyone knows he's going to ask Edith, except for this woman, apparently. But I wanted to just indicate, you know, again, these giant sleeves, this really thin fabric. I think everything about this world, the costume designer really, really took the time to, like, give everyone this sense of kind of fragility and almost this lacy, see-through everything, but also mixing that with these luxurious fabrics, either satin or velvet, also very of this time period, and really to show off that wealthiness of Edith and this woman.
Beautiful.
So these are a couple images. I'm not going to talk too much about this because we're going to go into this later, but just some images actually from, I believe this is from the FITM exhibit.
It is. You can tell the mannequins always have that paper hair.
Yeah. I was going to say also the text of the Crimson Peak in the back. But yeah, so just a couple of the costumes from the exhibit that I wanted to talk about, and we'll go in more detail about those later. So going back to the red dress, Guillermo talked a lot about wanting Jessica Chastain's first appearance in the ballroom and first appearance on the screen to be kind of like this drop of blood in this presence of, you know, all these different dancers. So, of course, this is her first dress. Just, again, the sheer amount of work that went into building this dress. It's so beautiful. And it kind of looks a little bit more bustle period because, again, she's sort of frozen in the past. But this is also the first kind of intimidating experience that you see when we first meet Jessica, whose name is Lucille in the movie.
I would be very intimidated.
And she's a very accomplished piano player, very talented. She kind of runs ship at her house with her brother. And she's very, very close to her brother. So there's this very kind of weird but also very tight-knit relationship between the two of them, and you're never really sure why. It's just creepy throughout the whole movie. And that's part of the unsettling ideas that you don't really know if she's on your side or not on your side. And you never really know if she's for Edith or against Edith. Actually, most of the time, you're pretty sure she's against Edith. But she's the one who wants Edith and her brother to get married. Yeah, so there's a lot of, like, sidebar conversations at the very beginning that kind of hint at what's going to happen. But you're still kind of left with a lot of questions of, like, who is this woman really and what is her relationship to the brother? This is just a little more close-up of just the detail that goes into her dress.
Wow.
And, like, again, I think it's velvet.
It looks like
velvet. Or like a velveteen almost. And then they actually handmade all of it. Like, she has this same kind of pattern of leaves, like kind of decaying and, like, dying leaves on most of her dresses, if not all of them. But just in different colors.
Cool.
So, like, on this one, it's all the red, and then she has a blue dress later on, and it's, like, a brown, like, really looking like it's rotted, trailing down her dress. So, again, all hand done, all hand sewn, just really, really lovely. So, I wanted to also go through another dress of hers. This is actually when they're in the park, and this is kind of the first time we see the Sharp siblings. And whenever they're in Buffalo, they're pretty much always in this kind of black, very somber colors. And then when they go to their house, it's funny because they get more color, but it's supposed to look a little bit more like their house, which is kind of decaying. So they're in blues when they go into their house, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But this is a very, very bustle silhouette. But you can still see some of that same kind of decaying leaf pattern that is also on this outfit, and just sort of artfully placed in a very different way than in her red dress or her blue dress. Mm-hmm. So then, of course, Thomas ends up asking Edith to marry him at the dismissal of her father. Her father really doesn't like him, doesn't have a good feeling about him, basically is totally against the idea. And then her father gets his head bashed in and gets murdered.
Oh, no.
So, of course, there's no one to say that, we don't know who's murdered him, but he gets murdered pretty much the day that Thomas is asked to leave town and basically break Edith's heart. And so Thomas waits behind anyways and says, I want to marry you. Come live with me. And she says yes. So this interesting first entrance, he kind of goes back to the blue of his house, which you can see here. It's distressed in such a way that it's meant to look decayed.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, she's kind of dressed again as this beautiful butterfly. All of these flowers were kind of hand done and hand tacked onto this beautiful coat and muff that she's got, matching muff. But even like the hat and like the detail and the sumptuous velvet that you see all over her, she's in a much lighter color, again, to kind of reflect this idea of her being the beacon of hope in the midst of this very sad mansion that he's been trapped in for a long time with his sister. So I thought that was a really nice contrast that the designer did. Just some more pictures of the back. You can see it's all hand done in the back as well.
Wow.
So beautiful. But yes, very deep care was taken to every part of this costume. Mm-hmm. And all of her costumes. This was sort of a quick, I'm not going to talk too much about him because he actually is hired by her father to investigate the Sharps. The friend right next door is the one that I was talking about, the scientist who's also the investigator. But one thing I wanted to just mention about this costume was that I love this kind of green plaid that he's in. He almost looks a little bit like a leprechaun, but it's actually a 3-piece suit that matches. Mm-hmm. And I love that he's also next to a green chair. So again, Guillermo plays around with a lot of this color matching and sort of tone on tone on tone, or same tone on tone on tone. So I love this image of him, and the fact that he's got these crazy sideburns that are also very period, which again, just small details for costume historians. But he's not a major character. I just really liked his outfit. One thing that is very creepy about this mansion is that all of the clay and the land that the house is built on is all like red clay. So everything comes out red.
Cool.
And it's like this really vibrant, almost like bad horror movie blood red. Mm-hmm. So everything that you kind of see in the house is sort of covered in red, or in some sort, or like you see stains of like bleeding red. So the house just constantly looks like it's kind of bleeding.
Wow.
Which is
creepy.
Very, very creepy. And like all the costumes, I think that was another thing too, is like, because it is a very gory movie. So there's a lot of like, they had to make multiples of all of these things, which is the other humongous feat. Okay, so I'm going to not skip to, but this is just some more of Lucille's costumes.
Wow, look at that.
This is her costume when she's in the house. So remember, we see her in that red first, and then we see her in black when she's in Buffalo. But once she returns back to her house, her brother and her both return to this really deep blue velvet. And this is pretty much the dress she stays in for the rest of the movie. Mm-hmm. One of the things they talked a little bit about was that they wanted this idea of the decay and the molding and kind of everything dying to sort of carry over into the costumes. And they joked about her train being like getting longer and longer each time, almost as if it was, I think they said it was like the umbilical cord tying her to the house.
Oh, wow.
Because she is very, very attached to this house. Mm-hmm. There's this whole idea, Thomas tries to go away at some point because Edith tries to convince him to leave because something in the house is clearly trying to hold him back, and she just refuses, and she obviously gets very angry that he's even considering leaving the house because there's something mentally wrong with her. So you see that reflected in her dress. So not just the long tail, but also just the bustle idea. Again, this very dated look for this time period. Even the fraying and the kind of dying leaves that you see repeated, it goes not just the front, but it also goes into the back. And again, all hand done. So
Wow.
I think the next, these are some close-ups of all of that kind of dead, decaying, like, it almost looks like even she's got even like bullet, it's like those bullet casings. I mean, it's not, but it's this idea that she's got these kind of dead everything kind of growing on in vines on her, which the costume designer talked about a lot. Yeah. Okay, then reflecting back to the swallowtail color of Edith, this is just kind of in contrast with the darkness of Lucille. And I wanted to just focus on how beautiful this looks. I think this is also from a 1900s portrait. I believe there's actually a dress that exists like this. It's funny that it kind of reminded me a little bit of Mirror Mirror too, with the bow in the back.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a close-up of the flowers that they also hand-tacked on there.
Wow.
It's so crazy.
So much
But yes, so just so much stuff. So much everything. A lot of embroidery.
Beautiful.
So this, I just wanted to focus on this because this is the last scene that we see Lucille's character in. And I don't know if you care about the spoiler, but
no.
I guess this is not a spoiler-free podcast.
It's not. We say it at the top.
But you find out that Lucille is clearly sleeping with her brother. So there's like this whole incestual relationship between the two of them. And so she's been controlling him and causing him to kill all of these other women in order for them to gain money to uphold the house.
Interesting.
So the whole time he's basically been going around and marrying women and then killing them after he's gotten their money.
Wow.
Which was going to be the case with Edith, but he actually ends up falling in love with Edith because of her innocence. And when he finally gets the courage to try to up and leave, she ends up killing her brother. So this is the last look that she's in when she's doing all of that. And it's, I mean, not only do you find her in her brother's arms, that's when Edith catches them, but she remains in this for the remainder of the movie when she's basically trying to not just kill her brother, but also kill Edith as she's trying to chase Edith out the house. And it just kind of goes to show this sort of, now that she's opened up and she's free and this is, you know, everything's out in the open, she runs around in this, and this is also a very sheer garment. So it almost is like it kind of reflects what Edith is wearing in a lot of her nightgown scenes, but in a much more regal way, as opposed to Edith's very kind of done up and conservative nightgown. So just a couple more pictures of it. You can see how sheer it is beautiful on the dress form.
Delicate, the fabric.
Yeah, so crazy. And then all the delicate lace at the top as well. And then this was just another image of
those sleeves are gigantic.
Sleevelet. Yeah, they are. It's so much.
Like
it's so full, but also because it's so light and so sheer, you kind of really see like how free she really is. But also kind of the most terrifying moment, because this is when she's in the final like stages of her gore bloodbath. Yep, that was it.
Awesome.
That was the last one.
I bet that was a fun garment to wear. It looked really flowy.
Especially in contrast to all the other stuff, because I think the other ones, she actually had all the extra layers.
Corset.
They showed an image of an old corset that she had to wear, but it didn't make it into the movie. But it was a very old, like, S-bend corset.
Oh, gosh.
So it was, like, really, really restricting. And I think that was sort of to help her get into the character of feeling like she's trapped in this house and that she has to be a certain way.
For those who don't know, an S-curve corset is like the hardest corset to wear, because the ideal silhouette of the time was like a full bosom and like your pelvis tilted back so that your hips were full and like your bum was full in the back. So it puts your spine in this like really horrible position where you're like always tilted forward. So if you're ever going to wear a corset, don't pick an S-curve one.
Don't do it.
Don't do it to yourself.
One really quick quote I wanted to leave off with, that was by, I believe it was by Kate. It said, Edith reflects the buffalo sunshine, whereas Lucille's heavy dark gown absorbs it. She looks like she's in mourning with the red rose detail as the only blast of color, and it mirrors the family heirloom, which is the wedding ring that Edith gets from Thomas, and ends up going to all of the people that he kills. While also matching the crimson of her ancestral estate. And it takes its place over her heart that belongs to her brother. whereas Edith wears a cornucopia of floral adornments on her hat and blouse to reflect new life. So I think that was definitely carried throughout the movie. I think she did a really good job. Very, very kind of symbolic in all of the costumes. And I think I didn't focus so much on the men because there was just so much to look at for the women. But I did love that Thomas at least reflected his sister in terms of color palette.
It's funny because I hear about that symbolism and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a little bit heavy-handed. But I think that, like, that's only because I'm thinking about it. You know, like, if you're watching the movie, it's something that you might, like, subconsciously recognize. But, like, only if you're analyzing it do you think about how literal it is. So that means that it's not heavy-handed.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And you do focus a lot more on how beautiful these costumes are because she focuses on luxurious textures, which I think is done very successfully.
Cool. I want to watch it now.
So yeah, I know. It's like I said, this one is probably not as scary as Midsommar. I think because I kind of was like, oh, okay, something is off about this relationship. And then by the end, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of saw that coming. There's like a few jump scares, but there's not too many. I think I had my volume low enough that it also didn't make it as scary.
I've seen the trailer. I remember the trailer came out being like, so the brother and sister are definitely together, right? Like, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, something is off.
And I think I know what it is.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
I will say, I think one thing that did bother me was the fact that I think Mia Wasikowski's character still looks so young that it does feel a little bit like he's marrying like a child bride.
Gross.
Like, I think that is, I mean, it's emphasized with her costumes too, but it definitely gives you kind of like a creepy, like, he's a little too old for you vibe. Like,
I mean, sadly,
even though he's probably not that much older.
Yeah, and not uncommon, especially like back in the day.
True.
But maybe not
true.
Super comfortable to think about that hard.
Yes, very true. So yes, that's our horror episode.
We made it.
We made it. I know.
It might be a while
exciting.
before we do another horror episode.
Yeah, very true. keep those suggestions maybe on the limit.
Yeah, keep in mind that we're scaredy cats. We haven't actually, I don't know
Yes.
that we've gotten any like horror requests yet. So good.
That's true.
Continue not doing that. Thanks.
We haven't hit the horror niche yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like horror costume drama is like a whole other, genre. Because like, it's not like we're going to.
Very true.
I mean, I personally am not going to just be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to cover Friday the 13th. Like it's not something that.
Right.
But like Crimson Peak, I think of as like a costume drama and like a gothic horror movie.
Yes, very much so.
Well,
cool. Well,
job.
thank you, Sarah.
Great job. Thank you, JoJo. Okay. Well,
thanks, listeners.
thank you. Don't forget to check out Breaking the Fourth Wall, the podcast that we're on. Once again, it'll be linked in the description. And thank you so much for listening.
See you on the next
See
one.
ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Costume Plot. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Costume Plot. If you have a question, comment, or a movie suggestion, you can email us at thecostumplot@gmail.com.
Our theme music is by Jesse Tim, and our artwork is by JoJo Siu. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts.